Thank you very much, and I'm glad that somebody could deal with this Macintosh thing in front of me. So, I'm going to spend some time talking about the European grid infrastructure and the role we believe that it will have in the future as we start moving to a very much digital-based European research area that we've already heard so much about. The next century is going to be very much dominated by data and about how do we use the data that's coming out of a whole range of simulations, instruments, to perform research and to enable the researcher to use the data that they have coming to them in this massive deluge to extract knowledge. And that is one of the key challenges facing people not only in industry, in research, but also in health, medicine and society as a whole. To do that, one thing that our experience over the last decade of exploring this great new world of ICT in the science community has shown us is the essential part that e-infrastructure plays around that. In order to collaborate between countries, between research groups, between disciplines, you need to have a common basis of language and exchange. Part of that is very much dominated by science, but there's also a technology aspect around it. And the need to bring countries together to remove the barriers to the free movement of data and knowledge that is essential for generating and operating in the 21st century. We need an infrastructure that allows access to services and tools and allows access to the data that's processed by those services and tools. And this is very much trying to personalize the research infrastructure that individual scientists have available to them. So this is something that has already been picked up, thankfully, in Horizon 2020 and the critical role that e-infrastructures play around that. Putting that into context, we're dealing then with the interaction between three very important actors. The research communities, the end-user scientists, the people who are sitting in the lab doing their work, the research infrastructures, many of which are going to be unique to particular communities, research communities and the work that they do, that will have to exist to support multiple research communities around the world and around Europe. And underpinning all of those research infrastructures is the e-infrastructures. The e-infrastructures who are delivering services to the research infrastructures, which in turn are customizing those services and providing the unique domain-specific environment needed by the research sitting in the research community. So the interaction between all three of these is critical, and the interaction of all of these is something that we've been looking at in the European grid infrastructure and its predecessor projects over the last 10 years, and exploring in collaboration with e-infrastructure providers around the world and within Europe. So key to this is a life cycle of innovation, hardening, delivery, and then sustaining whatever comes out of that process that's seen to have value for the community as a whole. Within EGI and the grid infrastructure, the innovation started with the European Data Grid project, an EC project funded back in 2001. From that initial testing of the water, a series of 3 projects were established and run called the Enabling Grids for e-Science. This started off with the innovation in the first phase, looking at the hardening in the second phase, and then looking at the delivery issues in the third phase as we ramped up into a production infrastructure to support scientists working at CERN, in life science and elsewhere around Europe and around the world. But as we were moving into this maturing of the infrastructure, the long-term sustainability of such a service became a critical concern. And around that, we started off a separate project, the EGI design study project, that started to think about how could you sustain a distributed collaborative infrastructure such as this for decades to come. Remembering that the scientists are having research challenges that are lasting 10, 20 or 30 years. When you have a lifetime of that sort of length, the issues around whether a project is 2 years, 3 years or 4 years becomes an irrelevance to a certain extent. So out of this discussion about sustainability, a new organisation, EGI.eu, was established. And this organisation had the mandate and the responsibility to bring together the individual national resource providers that we have within the community, and to deliver to our research communities and our user communities the services that they needed uniformly across Europe and around the world to help them in their research. This activity is now, this transition from delivery to sustainability is now something that's being supported by the EGI Inspire project, a 4-year project of which we're currently in the midpoint of. So EGI.eu has been established, and we have a wide range of countries that have signed up to its activities. Over 35 countries focused obviously around the EU 27, but also in the associated countries that are eligible for FP7 funding as well. In addition, we have 2 international organisations that are actively involved in our work, both as consumers and providers potentially of our services. And remember that GRID, although starting off being focused very much around compute technology, is now much broader than that. The issues around doing research is very much about shared access and use of services. It's about federation. It's not only about federating at a national level, it's about federating across disciplines as well. And this provides many challenges around open access, around intellectual property, around ownership of data, which we need to still carry on exploring these policy issues within the community. So EGI.eu has been established in February 2010. I'm its director. And we're owned and governed by the participants, the national grid infrastructures and the associated participants, other organisations that have signed up to our statutes. We're not a ERIC. ERIC's the European Research Infrastructure Consortia legal entity. That was still just coming through the legal process when we were considering our own legal identity. And this is something that we're continuing to monitor and look at, especially now that there are some examples of ERICs that have been established. But like any ERIC organisation, we have a governing body. For us, it's the EGI Council. The governing body establishes an executive board, our executive board, and from that there is a mechanism to manage and control the director. So our activity is very much around the coordination of the European grid resources. Our focus is not only on the operational coordination, but trying to expand that out into a balanced system of looking at the policy issues, the dissemination, the organisation of events, and the coordination of user support. We have a core team of 20 based in Amsterdam, but we also rely on the technical expertise that comes from partners around Europe who work together with us and with their own local expertise to deliver a set of services that bring the infrastructure together. And together, that activity is partly funded by the European Commission, but is also funded by cash contributions from the members within the organisation. And that together brings in for EGI.eu a turnover around just over €3 million a year. So the support from the European Commission, as you've seen, has not only been critical in establishing this activity over the last decade, but also in sustaining it through its transition phase that we're in at the moment through the EGI Inspire project. This is a large European project, certainly in terms of the number of partners, with around 50 beneficiaries and around 130 third parties that come together through those joint research units within those beneficiaries, and has funded partners predominantly, obviously, in the EU 27 and associated partners, but also a strong unfunded contribution coming from the Asia-Pacific area as well. But the activity encapsulated within EGI Inspire is just one part of what the activity that we're involved in around the world. The global reach of research clearly holds no bounds in terms of the collaboration that scientists want to perform. And likewise, we need to underpin that science collaboration with an e-infrastructure within Europe, and also partnership with peer resource providers around the world that we can collaborate with. So, as you can see, the vast majority of the world map is coloured in some sense. and that reflects the different maturity of the local e-infrastructures, but also the different maturity of the local e-infrastructures' willingness and ability to collaborate internationally. And there are other support activities going on around EGI Inspire that help bring up some of those activities. To name one, there is an activity called Chain, a project called Chain, looking at the coordination and harmonization of access to e-infrastructures, which deals globally, but has got a lot of focus around in Africa, the Mediterranean, and India. And there's another activity called Gazella that focuses very much on Latin America, that again helps support the interactions taking place within a region with the interactions taking place with Europe as well. And this together, through the resources that EGI provides services to, brings together over 350 resource centres. And monitoring and coordinating that distributed infrastructure has enabled EGI and its partners to develop a unique set of operational tools and services that we now see as being a key benefit and an exploitable benefit available for the research infrastructures that are looking to grow up around Europe, where they too will have data centres that are distributed and will need to integrate and bring those services together in a uniform way, something that we have been working on achieving over the last decade. So this infrastructure within Europe supports a large number of researchers across multiple disciplines, over 21,000 at the moment, and this is allowing us to not only grow the adoption of grids within the current science community, the very compute-based science community, but is enabling us to extract out the skills that we have around federation and allowing us to reach out to other communities such as the humanities to enable the data that they have within their community to be federated together for uniform access so that it can be used by a worldwide audience. So some of the things that we're doing on this infrastructure, and like Maria, I'm not going to try and explain the science behind it, is vast. Just picking on the example here of looking at how new viruses can be developed. The great amount of work that's going on in sequencing and is now available through protein modeling and chemical simulation allows a lot of work to be done in silico that was previously done on the lab bench, and obviously done a lot more quicker and to explore a lot more options. The sort of the computational work around doing that is vast, but this is where distributed computing resources can enable a researcher to access services and capacities that they wouldn't have available locally by reaching out to resources elsewhere within their network of their federated network. And this can enable a very much quicker return on the analysis that they're doing than they would do from their own desktop. We heard earlier about the square kilometre array that is going to be distributed not only over a vast geographical region within one country, but also across two vast geographical regions. The key to the SKA is the rapid analysis and integration of the data streams coming from the individual telescopes. Not only does that need great computing power very close to the site where the telescopes are, but the vast amount of data also needs to be distributed for analysis. And with the telescopes now being located either in South Africa and in Australia, but with a worldwide community wanting to access that data, the distributed infrastructure of networking and computing and storage resources, such as the EGI and its partners are bringing together, enables that infrastructure to be used to distribute that data and to do that analysis worldwide. And certainly some of the activities that are going on the grid at the moment are helping to develop the routines, the technologies and the operating procedures to put together the electronic infrastructure that will back up that research infrastructure when it starts being constructed over the next 10 to 20 years. So how does all this put together, and how do we see EGI evolving over the next 10 years as the Horizon 2020 program progresses? Well, we see very much moving from the monolithic project structure that we operated in for most of the last decade into something that's much more of an open ecosystem. the need to bring in resource providers both from academia and the research community, but alongside commercial providers, is becoming stronger and stronger as we see the adoption of cloud computing and cloud computing models being used within the community. To do that, we need to find ways to separate out the service delivery that we need within the community versus the innovation that we need to carry on evolving the services that we provide within the community. And so we see the community funds as being an excellent way of sustaining long-term what's important for the community. But we see the EC and Horizon 2020 as being the way of changing the services that we offer by bringing in new innovation and investing in the human capital that we need within the community to help develop EGI as a research infrastructure to support a multidisciplinary community with many types and changes of resources. So this has forced us over the last couple of months to start focusing much more on our long-term strategy. And we see very much three pillars. Three pillars around community and coordination, where we carry on with the community building, ensuring that there isn't an information divide across Europe, that we're able to reach out to the periphery countries in the infrastructure world and to enable them to access the resource and the expertise that exists elsewhere within Europe and exists within their own countries, and to enable a fair and equitable exchange and interchange of information. The operational infrastructure is key to what we do, not only in taking the legacy infrastructure we have at the moment, but being able to evolve it and evolve the services so that we can offer them to other research infrastructures with similar distributed management problems, but also to integrate the private cloud resources that we see emerging within the community with the public clouds that are coming from industry and commerce. And to integrate these to provide a federated infrastructure that can support researchers, whatever their persuasion and whatever the size and scope of their particular needs. And around that cloud infrastructure, we see the need for continued investment in technology around the research environments that scientists use. Every research community and every researcher wants an environment that's tuned to their particular needs. One size does not fit all, and therefore we need to not only have an infrastructure that is flexible in order to cope with these changing demands, but we also need a set of technologies that are able to adapt to the needs of the particular researcher and their use of the infrastructure. So how does that align with the visions of Europe in 2020? We believe fairly well, picking up on some of the points in the Innovation Union, the issue around private and public financing, developing human capital, and developing the European research area, and to provide a single market for services is something we feel is very strongly aligned with what we're doing. But also looking at the digital agenda, the issues around the interoperability and having borderless services are things that we have been focusing from the last decade and are core at the heart of the EGI community. This we see as being fundamental e-infrastructures as removing the barriers to the free movement of knowledge around Europe and also around the world. And this we're very pleased to see has been recognised in past communications from the European Commission and the European Parliament. So EGI for the future, we believe we have a very clear vision as to how we can play a role in providing a digital European research area and supporting the e-infrastructure needs around that for an open federation of reliable services that provide uniform access to national computing, storage and data resources. This very much fills with our mission coming from a research community that many of us do within EGI, of connecting researchers in all disciplines with the work that they do both within Europe and the ICT service they need to support that, but also to engage collaboratively in the work that they do within Europe and around the world to enable them to produce the excellent research that is critical both for them and also for Europe and society as a whole. Core for that is the leadership, openness, reliability, innovation provided across the community through the work that we do and through the work that EGI.eu does on behalf of integrating this community together. So to finish off with, the need for a global e-infrastructure I think is more paramount than it's ever been in our last short history of 10 years or so. The European research area presents many challenges, both with the different communities they want to bring together and with the types of research that need to be integrated together. And we see having a very flexible and nimble e-infrastructure underneath that as being absolutely critical. It's also critical to have that federation model to enable national investments to be exploited at a European and worldwide level. And we see the European Commission and national funds as being key around that. For long-term sustainability, we look to our own community to sustain the operation of the services that we see as being critical to keep the infrastructure together. But we see the European Commission as being critical in providing funds to change that service offering through the innovation that can be provided through short-term projects and to enable investment in our human capital, because it is the people within EGI that enables outreach to new researchers and new research communities through their enthusiasm and their ability to integrate and share the work of others. And I invite you to come along to the technical forum in September in Prague, where you'll be able to hear much more about what goes on. Thank you very much.